discussing the Mikair of the Chiv of Kriyas Torah, and then we moved into two central questions, one which we began yesterday, which is whether Kriyas Torah is a Chayvas Tzibur or a Chayvas Yachid. The second question, which we'll do tomorrow, will be whether Kriyas Torah is a Chiv Shmiur or a Chiv Kriya. These two overlap extensively, as they do with the question of the Mechayev Midinei Talmud Torah, Midinei Shmiyasa Torah, Midinei overlap between both. So yesterday, on the subject of Tzibur or Yachid, we brought you, if I remember correctly, 4 or 5 bullet points. First, the fact that Kriyas Torah is listed in the Mishnah Daf Chav Gimel as those on a list of requirements that require a Sarah, because the Gemara says, "Mikdashti b'toich b'nei Yisrael chol davar shebekdusha lo yehei pachos mi'asara," which raises the question of, if that's the case, why did the Ran in Megillah say that the aside of Ein Karen Pachas Masara is a Takanta Dirabanan? If it's Nilman from Mikdashti, l'chayra it is the Iraisa. We then jumped a little bit ahead to a recent Achrein, because that was the source for the Magen Gebayrim and Dele Mitzrayim, which makes the analogy to Berchais Kaihanim, to whether the mitzvah is an addition on the Kayan to be Mevarech, on Israel to be Mizbarech. Therefore, in such a case, it's not possible to have a requirement of Davar Shebekdusha Pachos Mi'asara, the mitzvah is on the Kayan. So here too, everybody would agree that Kaddish and Baruch Hu is a mitzvah on the Yachid. What you need 10 in order to effectuate the Yachid. This is, of course, echoes, even though it comes from a very strange combination of Mitzrayim and Hungary. But this is echoes of Reb Chaim's Svar that we heard later in the Shiur. And the Bnei Maven says, Al Pi this Kinas V'Rodim, we can understand why the Ran could not use the halacha of Inigdashti, because Kriyas Torah is not a Chayvas Yachid, it's a Chayvas Tzibur, which opened up the question, is Kriyas Torah a Chayvas Yachid or a Chayvas Tzibur? We saw yesterday a major, what seems to be seminal machlokes between the Rishonim, the Rif, Paskins, and Hilchais Megillah. You can be clear it. Aliba the Rav. Shalei Bezmana only Ba'asara. Ravasi is Chaylik on Rav. And since Rav was Chash Lahadar Ravasi, then he needed Asara. But that was after Mizmana. The Rav says, Mikra din, that's a raya, we paskin like Rav, that Mizmana loy boy asara. Says the Ran, says the Balamar, I don't agree with this. He's taking the raya from Hachanah, and we'll repeat that part again. And the reason is, he says, Kriyas Megillah is not counted in those things that are Tayin Asara. So of course you don't need Asara for Kriyas Megillah. It's simply not in that Mishnah and Daf Chav Gimel. The Mishnah is in Mechsaktas Megillah, but Kriyas Megillah is not included there, and therefore Mechtesi should need Asara. Says the Ramban, and this is the direct connection to Kriyas Torah, that the Mishnah is only talking about Chayvas Tzibur and not Chayvas Yachid. A clear lesson of the Ramban that Kriyas Torah is Chayvas Tzibur. Says the Adkan Shalom Yisrael for approximately 500 plus years. I should say 400 plus years. Came along the Chai Adam, the Chai Adam Kallah Lamed Aleph from the Stapek. You had a number of people in shul that had not heard Kriyas Torah. Could you read Kriyas Torah just for these people? I'm scrolling through it fast, so I don't know if you can be able to. I'm not sure who's doing the screen sharing today, but I'm gonna. I'm just going through it fast, so I'm not going to pause to read it again because I heard yesterday, and I did a quick chazar last night. I'm just going to do the recap so we can go to the new material. Says the Chai Adam that even the stapek, if there's Bnei Adam Shleishom Akri, if you're mutter or not, maybe you need 10. It says Chavetz Chaim v'Hareini Gadol Echad Shemufurish Baran Sugi de Megillah Beruvan Shalei Karu Sagi. You don't need a Sarah. We don't need a Sarah, as they state in the Rav. Now, why is that? So maybe the takana was only when you have Sarah B'chiyuvim. So when he says the Ran, he means the Ramban. Since the Ramban holds that it is a chayvas tzibur, so all you need of that tzibur is Rav tzibur, shalei shavu would be sufficient. And therefore, according to the Havana, the Bir Halacha, even if Kriyas Torah is a chayvas tzibur, the Rav of a tzibur is sufficient, and therefore the chiv is not Rami al kol gavra v'gavra. Rav of a tzibur is sufficient because the two of them work together. Yesterday we went through the at the end of the Shiur. We went through the story as brought in by Michal Yehuda, where she says that the story was first in machlekes between Rav Chaim and his Mechudin Rav Michal, Rav Eli Prishner. Prishner learned the Ramban and the Ran Pshutai. You need it's a chayvas tzibur. Rav Chaim held the Kriyas Torah was at least in Shabbos was a chayvas yach. Last night we came out Chaim is minded on Beis V'Heitz the chayvas tzibur. Chaim held it was a chayvas yach, and it was very much your Kriyas Torah. They didn't have tzibur. Daven b'yechidus. Kriyas Torah was a chayvas yachid. You'll ask if you daven b'yechidus, what do they hear? The chayvas yachid of kedusha and Baruch. That is a good question. That's for another time, and I'll leave to other people to defend that meaning. The second version of the story was that it took place at lunch, which Rav Moshe Lindinsky and Rav Chaim had a novel reading of the Ran, Shem the Ramban, putting a semicolon, which turned out that the only ones that need the words Ruben B'chayavim are only going Kaddish Baruch Hu and not on Kriyas Torah, and therefore Kriyas Torah is that type of a chayvas sibur, which requires a sar. But it's a chayvas yachid. So what does this mean? So it's a chayvas yachid which cannot be carried out until you have a sibur. Says Reb Chaim, I'm going to go down on the side of the Chai Adam Safek, that it's the tzibur that can only be done by Asara. And Khan, a recap of what we did yesterday morning. Yesterday evening, we spent most of our time learning a Berch Shmuel. Berch Shmuel brings down this vart from the Rebbe Reb Chaim with a different set of language, and he's mistapek. And what does it mean that you need 10 for something? Does that mean until you get to 10, really, each person is building his way up to 10, and he's something, and he has a chiyuv on himself. But you can't carry out the chiyuv, and there's actually 10 people who have a chiyuv in that room. That's one way of looking at it. Or no. Pshat is that type of thing, including Kriyas Torah, that you need a chiyuv of a sarah. There's nothing until you get 10. Because until you get 10, it's a chayva sibur. Until you get 10, you don't have a sibur. So you can't have a chayva sibur until you have a sibur. And therefore, you have nothing until you have everything. All for one for all. Don't remember which classic that comes from, but I'm borrowing that for explanation purposes. Baruch Bar says, can't necessarily make zera shavos between Megillah, Kriyas Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lav Dafka, all are the same svara, but this svara controls whether we want to apply it to every single one. So if that's the case, it's understandable why Ruba Kakulai wouldn't work. That's what Reb Chaim says. Rav doesn't work, but Kriyas Torah need 10. Why? Because Reb Chaim held that it was that type of a chiyuv, that it was a chiyuv yachid, but it didn't really happen until you had all 10. The tzibur didn't have a shamed tzibur on it until you had all 10. So how is it possible to say Rav, which is a din and Kallah Torah Kula, that Rav works? How is it possible to say Rav works? Rav can only work when you're on your way on a continuum to something, and you're on your way to getting there. Chazal said you don't have to get to 10. 6 is sufficient. Look here in the Rechbeh for those who won last night. About 8 lines from the bottom of the yellowing. V'amar, the Noimad Achim, that's Dafka Yisei Sar B'Yachad, which is Reb Chaim held. I was like Shaykh in the Ruba Kakulai, the Lekhi of Klal. It's a chiyuv sibur in such a way that requires 10 people to be in the room before there's such a halacha, before there's such a chiyuv, before there's a mitzvah of Kriyas Torah. There's nothing. There's no garnished until there is that chiyuv. Filomiyat chiyuv lek. Chiyuv chal dafka yidasar. Avanayim dechiyuv chal afil al de echad el dino de nevel basara. You can type say Ruba Kakul. And Adkan remarkable there. So this testimony together now gives us a fuller picture. Chaim will conclude last night's shiur with contradictory edus on the Stipler and the Chaznish. They were maked in Kriyas Torah. They were not maked in Kriyas Torah. And Vilna, the Chaznish was makbid. Mikra didn't. He asks the Stipler, why you're running after Kriyas Torah? You don't have to. You're only if you're in the shul, do you have to? And we went back and forth over these Meiser Ravs. Last night we concluded with a set of Biurim for Shlomo Zalman. Then Alicha Shlomo. Shlomo Zalman brings the Vart from Reb Chaim, brings the Raya from the Rambam Hilchos, which I don't have time to go through again. And Lech V'Tidr Shenu Misham on the Marmakoyim is here in the Alicha Shlomo and in the Minchas Shlomo, where it's explained with 3 nafkamina halachos. Nafkamina halachos were, besides obviously if you have to go out, it was a nafkamina halacha that Matan Ben Midrash, which we did not see earlier in the Reb Chaim literature. Reb Chaim was Meida that Beis V'Hei was a chayva sibur. Kasher Shlomo Zalman asks why. Beis V'Hei is learned from the same Gimel Yom B'Lei Torah as Shabbos. We'll have to think about that. Second nafkamina was a Ben Eretz Yisrael on the second day of Yom Tov is not mechuyev to go run around looking for Kriyas Torah because Chiyuv Tzibur does Chal, not Chal on him because he's not part of that Tzibur. It's not a Chiyuv Yachid. If it would be a Chiyuv Yachid, maybe he's not allowed to Malach in Yom Tov Sheni. Maybe he has to hear Kriyas Torah. But since it's a Chiyuv Tzibur, he does not. And the third nafkamina was this year, Achan Shal Pesach and Shabbos. This year's Achan Pesach and Shabbos, right? I hope I'm not just play doing. Yeah. So right, this year I get to take out my my Knedlich Shiur. Okay. All Magidi Shiur know that when after Pesach Shabbos you can do the Knedlich Shiur. When you make Knedlich this year, if you are Makbid and Shrew, it's Friday night. Can't cook. Can't make it on Thursday. Still Shrishal Pesach. Major problem. Okay, so what we didn't do yesterday, and which I said I'm going to suspend for the moment and wait for a more opportune time because it's very large literature, is the Ibris Moshe, which more or less goes through the Ramban, and also said the Ramban is a little bit not dispositive. I'm going to leave that for another time because probably the next 10 days or after, or it's because it would literally take an hour and a half to go through this incredible information. I don't like extracting 2 lines from information. I don't feel that does justice to the incredible Maya Yagia putting every single children in information. Okay, so I want to add one more halacha l'maisa on Chavis Sibra and Chavis Yachid, which is a well-known halacha. The Mechaber and Kuflam and Hay brought here on Yud Ches has the following scenario: two real world. Bnei Adam achavushim. Turn on page Yud Ches. I'll wait a second until you scroll. Well, you got there very quickly. Yud Ches, page Yud Ches. Right, further up. Beautiful. Bnei Adam hachavushim v'veis asurim. Hey, let her bring them to Sefer Torah. Yeah. This is the Mechaber's quoting of Mordechai, and the Rosh Hashanah. I feel a Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim. Dov Kol will speak about this Mordechai. We'll see. Haga. Manu dafka b'shas akriya l'uvad. Avle mechinu lai Sefer Torah yom yamayim kaidem mutter. Why is that? Says the Mishnah Berurah in Mem Zayin. They looked this by. They're stuck. They can't go out. Too bad. Now you don't bring a sefer to a person. But sadly enough, the Mishnah Berurah says if there were 10 people and there was a minion there, then it's mutter because you're not bringing it to a yachid. You are bringing it to. You are bringing it to a tzibur. So the Bir Halacha here, it's an important Bir Halacha. We'll have to learn this Bir Halacha together here. And then we'll try to see if we can get one or more Shubas in. I apologize that we're running behind here because of the administrative hassle. But we'll try to be Muslim to whatever we can't do today, we'll be Muslim tonight. So, yeah, there'll be a shir tonight at 8 o'clock. To see whatever we can cram here. And tomorrow we have to do Kriyan Shmir. So the Bir Halacha says the following. Where does this come from? This issue of none being dissolved on the Sefer Torah. So the Bir Halacha says the Mordechai took it from the Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi is brought in the Beisaysiv. The Mordechai is brought in the Beisaysiv. Mordechai is quoted Yerushalmi. Zel Shayna Sham. Make the Bir Halacha bigger, please. B'chol acha b'chol. Everything. Atar. Right. Give us the marker there. Atar. The main thing that we need is on the bottom of your halacha, but I'm going to go through the whole thing since it's important. How could that be? The Hainu brings a right from the Gemara where it says the Hachanah Knesses, the Gemara Yuma, when it comes to the Kriyas Torah of the Kohen Gadol and Kippur, they handed the Torah down a line. Hachanah Knesses will give it to the Rosh Knesses, God, Kohen Gadol. Torah gets the Salah when you are being it's being handled by chashuv people. Ein sham beisayis. Bem sedavar tmua. Yerushalmi ma'ik k'she'ef shel elch among she'sefer Torah munachas l'chach zilzulu My shank was Esha Nusa as a kind of Christel, Lower, that's a mice of Lusu will say for Terra. I don't know, says the Birlacha Lacharid and Shalmi's Shver. Why is it listen? These people are Nabach, they're stuck. I'm not going to go into why they're stuck, So they want to be kind of mitzvah. Why should we not bring them Sefer Torah? Why is that considered to be a Zelusa? Says the Birlacha. Ubemis Kain who that's our Israel. L'chayla mutal avi Sefer Torah etzlai. You're allowed to bring the Sefer Torah to l'chayla. To anasu. When time is able to shine them loisen and mevim bavor kfayim lezeh she'onus kol shkein shemevim lebeisei ayin sham. The Isam are, I guess, who are Numa. Those people, the Skan, the Chulu. That's the Kasha of the Biralach. Lafi Zeh, what the question? The Maishna. Ladin, you're at the Philomacha, the Marcha said you cannot bring them Sefer and the Chaber Paskins like the Marcha. Anyway, Kim Chidmach Shemetzach L'Shem L'Kriyas Torah. You want to bring in 10 other people into jail. Like is Ruah the Masham the Matul Chayil Achim Sar Sham Lavi Sefer Torah Tzlei. The town of Menadin Yashleim then Kallah Yachim it's Kriyas Torah the Mansion Yachal and the West Medrash. Kriyas Torah is a Chayv Tzibur and there's no Chiyuv to go to shul. All of a sudden there's a Chayv Tzibur because they're now a Tzibur and they can't leave because they're a Nusim. Gaba Mardechai Miter the Tzarech Lavim Sefer Torah Lik Rice. Ah. And he says, looking at Yarabba, said the same thing. The Mardechai Miter Bisham Yeshem Sarah Kain Nil Bizaitle Hina and the Biralacha is very strong about this. Al Kapanim, the Chayr the Biralacha has to be consistent with the previous Biralacha, and the other Kriyas Torah is Chayvel Tzivur. And therefore, even though it's chayv l'tzibur, but if somebody is not eina einus, you are mechuyev to go here Kriyas Torah, because once there's a tzibur, why should the yachid not go to the tzibur? He's not an onus, only an onus. So all of a sudden, we have now a strange type of chayv tzibur. We have a chayv tzibur, and a chinami. There's only a chiyuv for a tzibur to learn Kriyas Torah when the tzibur is together. But once there's a tzibur in town, maybe if you're not honest, you're mechuyev to go to be mishtatem with the tzibur, and that is maybe what Reb Chaim held. He held it was a yachid dikadin once there is a tzibur. Maybe this is an extension of this. I'm not necessarily inputting this Reb Chaim into the Spir Halacha, but it certainly is not inconsistent. Okay, so now we have many of the major Makairis and some of the Nafkaminis for whether it's Chayv Yachid or Chayv Tzibur. I left out the main Nafkamina, which we will get to more when it comes to Chiyuv's Kriya and Chiyuv's Shmiya. The main Nafkamina is what happens if you didn't hear every word in Kriyas Torah. So even the Chayv Tzibur, why do you have to hear every word? Even in Tim Tzalemer, you have to be in shul as part of the Tzibur when it's being laned, but the Tzibur is laning. So why do you have to hear every word? So if you hold it to Chayv Tzibur, Kriyas Torah, whether you can stay home or not, kasha. But if you're there and you miss something, you're part of a Tzibur who's tzchilent. So what's wrong with that? Why is that a problem? A smaller tshuva, which I think we can do, addresses this question. Now we have to make it consistent with Tzibur and Yachid. For on page Chavches. In 1969. Yes, I'm sorry. Was that a question? Chavches. Chavches, you're way ahead. Chavches. Chavches. Yeah. Okay. Why do you have to hear everything? But the evidence he makes a chiluk between Beis V'Hei and Shabbos. Him shem Chamish Shabbos, Papa Kridi Yantif, telling Rakum Kridi Yom Sukkam Lo Yatsa, then Pachsum Yom Sukkam. Yechla Shmai Afteva Achas, Chasam Yom Sukkam, Shmai Sham Al Shnei Krum Shlo Yatsa. You have to hear three. That's the Kanas Ezra. The Kriya B'Yaiser B'Yom Sukkam, which most Kriyas are. Im Shama, not all, most are. Im Shama Gimel Sukkam Shalemim Yatsa. Created by the Shabbos, Rashi was even created to Mitzad Mezayim Krim after the Parsha Kli Yatsa, Meli Gankin Cholop and Kriya, they give real Kriya the guy of Sukkim. A Yechsale a Pasuk should dealing by Teva, and if you're missing a Pasuk, you're not Yaitza. And certainly if you missed the entire Pasuk, and certainly if you missed an entire island. Shaila is why? Why? Chayv Sibur. Chayv Sibur. You don't have to go to shul there in the first place. Why are you not Yaitza if you missed a pasuk or even a word? He says, Moshe says, look, right now it's not a real world question because there's no way if somebody missed something that we're going to make a tirchad tzibura. And everybody who wasn't concentrating, wasn't listening, or sneezed, or had to go to the bathroom, or whatever, could start landing off every single person. That's not possible because of Yechidim. However, Yeshminin Shalom Shechsiru Shmai Tevis Psukim. Yesh Lohem Achal Seirach Veis. I don't know what the story was. It was a loud sonic boom. Make up whatever it sees you want. Yes, from Achat Filik Shla Yeshum Tirchel Shama Korkril Azak from Gavju Shmaya. Yes, Azak 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 Shmaya. Krivul Yachsum Shmaya. Somebody says you will have to go back, and if it's not a Tirchel for the rest of the Tzibur, it's not going to clap in the middle and start elongating the dali by 20 minutes. But if you and a kutza of people, how many? Okay, if you and a kutza of people missed, you're mechuyev to go back. And the question is, why? Moshe goes on to discuss another question called Psukim Le'Paski Moshe. And this has to be reconciled with the other Rebbe's. Moshe also has to be reconciled with the question, if it's a Chayvas Sibur, why is it not? Why is it necessary? And Moshe had the same run. And as I mentioned yesterday, Moshe does discuss in that previous tshuva how to deal with that run. And that's the question which we have to try to reconcile. Why is a chiyuv to go back? Mistakes and chaseros for a yachid, for a tzibur. We understand why we're to go back. Okay, this is a Metzias Kasha. That's why I just bavarned what you just wrote here. I just bavarned here. That's Metzias Kasha. Ramesh is postulating what a tzibur did here, and the Yechidim didn't hear. That's how he puts it. Okay, so in order to make sure that I can finish this topic today and tomorrow, today and tonight, I'm gonna have to do some editing. There are 3 tshuvas in the Achronim, which are important tshuvas. One is in chronological order. They're in the Bin Shleimer of Shlomo Kain of Vilna. Second is the Gevuras Leo from the Fenkin, which Yideno Againer of Daniel Klein was instrumental in reprinting. Actually, 4 tshuvas. One in the Riyoshev Bar Meir Arik, and one in the tshuvas and Hagais of Moshe Sternbach, and one in the Minchas Yitzchak of Dain Weiss. So those are 5 or 6 tshuvas. And I'd like to, each of them raises very interesting questions in Chayvus Sibur and Chayvus Yachid. I'd like to see if I can, I'm not going to be able to go through all of them inside. I'd like to take the highlights out of each one so you'll have a full package of this libur. To start chronologically, I guess we should do it the right way, which is chronological. The problem that, of course, the Bin Shlomo is long. And the Bin Shlomo is zeitig in the sense that it comes at it from a different category of Kriyas Tzibur, which is Kriyas Tainus. But he then starts going through the entire sugya. I'm not going to be able to do that in the next 15 minutes. So let's see if we can go through the Tshuva of Rav Henkin, which is a little bit shorter. The Tshuva of Henkin was written to Herschel Eichenstein in 1952. And Herschel Eichenstein is father and grandfather of family friends of ours. He was a big Talmid Chacham, and he corresponded with various Gedolei Yisrael. And here he responds to this Shaila. He sent him a quintris, okay? And the Henkin responded back. He asked him, why are you sending me K'treis Verbenich to have to give ours to Chashav Talmid Chacham. Okay. So Rav Henkin here gives you in the first paragraph, which I'll leave to you to see, a little bit of a insight into America in the 40s and 50s, where he talks about, not sure where he was living at the time. They were Chavri Vadair, and he's talking about this bad thing that people would create the shuls in the Teatrais and Karkasais, and he talks about how this is not a particularly good thing. 1 second, everybody say hello.
Rabbi Gottesman, you're muted. Rabbi Gottesman, you're muted.
I got it. Thank you. So I apologize. Okay, so then he goes on to discuss what categories of mitzvahs and yehugim are chayvas siburs and what are chayvas yachid. These are chayvas sibur to build a shul in every town. That's clear. There should be a basic knesses, and there should be ability to daven 3 tefillas tzibur, and that is so clear that it's a nice base. So you are kaif on this. Everybody is required to shell out knas money, and this is a kiyum of Udashti B'teich B'nei Yisrael, and that is a kiyum of Migdash Ma'at B'te Knesiyos B'te Midrashos. Let's go to page Lamed Hey. He says, however, that's the tzibur. What about a yachid? So he says, even when it comes to tefillah, every yachid ne'atzvai, avadi has a mitzvah to be mishtatev from the tzibur. The mitzvah to be mishtatev from the tzibur when is in the basic knesses, because then he has a negative requirement of not being pirish from that tzibur. And the reason for that is that since it's mukhrach to go outside of a basic nesses, l'spal bichidi, and that basic nesses before the tzibur. That's a halach of Shulchan Aruch. And the Chazal did not allow a basic nesses because these are all things where the chiyuv of kavod of the tzibur and the chiyuv for you to be mishtatev in the tzibur was chal on you when you already had a chiyuv that evolved upon you as part of the tzibur. Okay, but when he's at home, and both when it comes to davening Kriyas Torah, who says that you're mechuyev if it's a tircha to go? If you look at the Lashon Shulchan Aruch, and this is one of those things that does the asal aimer fnei amaretz. Careful whenever I learn Simon Sadik with my elam back home because I don't want to give them any outs. Because the Mechaber says ishtadel ispal b'tzibur, because tefillah is much more powerful b'tzibur, but it's not a mitzvah, not a chiyuv that's ramya on each yachid dafke to daven b'tzibur. And Chazal said that the tefillah is nishma in the knesses, and as you all know, it's even better to daven yachidus in the basic knesses than daven at home, because you're slapping the basic knesset. You call the shachan ra if you're close by and you don't daven the basic knesset. Even be yachid, it's two separate dinim. Okay. However, what about when he goes into how much you have to be chayzer? Obvious kasha is where it says that you mechuyev to go down mil lachayr or be'ir to look for water to daven. See, for that. Okay. When it comes to Kriyas Torah, you see on the left side, Vadai, the Kriyas Torah, ain't shaykh leitzim mishlei shama. Guf roven and guf shemai. Ain't shaykh shlichus b'zeh. But feel kiven from the spam bavakish by the tzibur chanenim itcha /rabim. As that shaykh shlichus and feel shlei b'fana. Rakbad le'anaseh and nasek shluchai. And he says, it was mechadish, and the Chazal says berachas shachar to be mitzvah tzibur. That's not to make brachos. He has to say it b'lashon rabim because he's saying it as a shlichus for them. I can't feel. What about Kriyas Torah? He says the gamlin in Kriyas Torah near the ein zechayvas yachid. And it comes down squarely on the side of chayvas tzibur. Rak Megillah Parsha Zachar chayvas yachid. Avol b'Kriyas Torah. Shabbos Yontif Beis V'Hei puts them all together. Doesn't make this bifurcation with Shabbos and Beis V'Hei. Ikar hatakana she'Kriyas Torah Beis HaKnesses V'Loi Al Yachid She'Beisai. So Lashon Rambam. Rambam said, Moshe Rabbeinu was metakein. There should be Kriyas Torah Be'Rabim. Be'Rabim. If you look at the notes down here. I assume these notes are put together by aforementioned Rav Daniel. This is the Ramban, and he quotes quite a few other Achrayim, including the Bin Shlomo, which we will see presently. So he says, "Vadeim bebayis." If you're in shul, Kriyas Torah is not different than tefillah. Once you're in shul, it's the chelek that shabai that you're a chelek in the tzibur is chal on you. But it is not. Rabbi said that's the question to Rabbi's Letterech, and do we send Rabbi Kallah the links every Wednesday, or he already uses the same one? He knows what to use. We don't send it to him again, right?
He uses the same link, and he's already logged on.
He's logged on? I still don't see him. Okay. So that's why I asked. I didn't see him. So if you're in shul, so as we said earlier, you can't be peiresh from the tzibur. Because when you're in shul, it was chal on you, because the chalais of the tzibur was devolved upon you. There was a chiv, there's a halacha of al tifresh, or all the other nihugim of kvayda atzibur when it comes to tefillah, you can't leave. The same with the chayr b for kriyas Torah. There are exceptions. There are exceptions for there are exceptions for Teras Nasai, which we're not going to go into now. The Gambas Esh Mefarshim brings a Shitas Abach, Sharachtan in Targon Nema, Lebeshas Kriyas Torah. And Maisim Chayim Shefalesim Shebes Knessim Chasam Sukkim Paishim Honest Sis Shrachim. Chapter Rina Shiach Mishal Lachaz Ben Achov. Never tell it. So there's Rav Henkin arguing with Rav Moshe. Maybe not. He says clearly, Maisim Chayim, person has to go out to the bathroom. I'm sure it's happened to many of us. You go up and Gavla Gavra can't get back in time, you missed the first pasuk. So if you have 10 people who missed the first pasuk, whatever the Matthias is, okay, afterwards, maybe he said, Ramesha, you should take a Sefer Torah and relane it. Make a bracha, you don't make a bracha. Different question. But we don't find that we are requiring the Yachid to go around, looking for chaseris and yaseris, if you missed a few words, or you missed a line, or even if you missed more. It says Pesukim. Maybe you missed, maybe it's the chiyuv of Shiva Kruyim, but even the Shiva Kruyim is a chiyuv on the tzibur, not on the Yachid. Okay, he says, I can't look in Achrayim because I don't have time to look in Achrayim. And it's even before Shavade Das Samaril Kain Hu. By the way, before the Rav comes on, Rabbi said, we Baruch Hashem, I can drop one of the requests because we seem to have finished the Siyumim. I think there was one blot left in Megillah. So we're okay on the Siyumim, but we're not okay on the aforementioned Karas Hatayv. And we also did not get many responses about Bnei Brak. And the call I took before was the person calling me about where are we going, what do we want to do in Bnei Brak. So that depends on how many people are coming. Now I know that many people will only respond if we tell them where it is, but I got to check the name problem because I can't figure out where it is until I know how many people want to come. So it would be helpful. I know several of you did respond. And I explained enough to me to the dean already yesterday. So please let us know, because if it's a small item, then that gives us certain flexibilities. If it's a bigger item, then we'll have to do what has to be done. So what's this Mariel? So in the footnote, it brings them a reel which says, and the Rosham place with last year, Chumla place Knellis, Balba, Sarmavad, Smak, Baguda, so I was sorry to call Kak Mitzvah, Yakulham, Tlosan Bais, Lamtin Shatrich, Hamlas, Balba, Sar. He started as the Machaber. There are 15 people. Yes, okay. Very good. So, I'm not sure they'll stay. It's a good point from Mark. So what's the pshat? He says, Mariel clearly says you're not going to go look for making an air of Techumen. And if you're not going to make Techumen, means there's no chiyuv on you to do that. And v'af shemashal itler Techumen shel tzur sivur kashem ma'id. Aval ikad dvar shel kriyat sivur ein zechayim gomach al yachid. Aval ek shchisim min basic knesset shel battle atamid. Then you are mechuyev to keep up the chiv that's ramel et sibur that is there. Okay, some of the other literature brought in 164. Note 164. The Yarchei, the Igros Moshe, HaRav. We'll try to, and the Bin Shlomo, we'll try to get to look as we can presently. We'll try to look at it tonight. We'll look at it further at Yisrael. And Parshas Zachar is a Chayvas Yachid. Seems, he's making a diak here. I don't know if you can make diukim in Chuvas of that were written in the 50s, but it says Saraida Parim Shkolim are not Chayvis Yach. Okay, and Mashmois seem to place in that way, but I was trained not to make diukim in Chayvis Yach. Okay, Rabbi Sai, as I expected, this is all I'll be able to cram in now since 11:59. The Rav is here. I can't see because we have a bit crowded. I don't see all the.
Right here.
Right,
Shalom
Rav. So
Aleichem.
first of all, I want to introduce you to a lot of people that you don't necessarily see every week because we have a big element came on this week to prepare for the Yarchei. Kallah told them they're getting a bonus shiur today because this is a little bit of different. Chagava Zachen, that's what we made up because the Lumdish Shiur. I think was it okay with the one that I chose of those three that to be the concentrate on it? Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. And we're gonna get Tan Ruchner. So for those of you who don't know, the Rav comes on every single Wednesday. We made a raw cheshbon. And since we're now about to crack our third year, everybody remembers grimly that the Magefa Shahaya, hopefully it's in past tense, started 2 years ago, believe it or not. We're about to enter on our third year. If you do the math, we came on every single day, except for Erev Kippur. We were on Erev Hachanah. We were on Erev